said, let's flip coins. So I've got pennies, heads and tails. Why coins? Why flip pennies? Why is that appealing and why is that useful? Well, it's appealing because you've probably been flipping coins since you were tiny. I remember when our son was very young, we used to have things called tournaments out on the trampoline where he'd make me guess. He'd flip a coin. Guess if it's heads or tails, Dad. I would always guess heads. We'll talk more about that later. But also, if you think about it, flipping a coin is extraordinarily useful because it generates a perfectly random event that you can use to your advantage. Later on in Math 244, for example, if you're trying to assign subjects to one of two groups randomly, this is the perfect way to do it so that you get equal numbered groups. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's just chat about flipping a coin. Now, when I ask people about flipping a coin, there's a phrase that often comes up, 50-50. And I ask people, what does it mean to be 50-50 or have a chance or a probability of 50-50? And they say things often, they'll say, well, there's two outcomes. And that's correct, there are. There's a head side and there's a tail side. And I say, is there anything more than just two outcomes? And they'll oftentimes stop. If you've had me in 98 or 105, you're probably nodding your head, yes, there is something more. But that's okay. We'll come back to the something more as we go. What I want to do is I'm going to flip this coin 10 times. Actually, I've got 10 individual coins, and I'm going to flip each one once and then put the resulting coins on the camera that's right here and keep track of the results. So let's get started. There's our first flip, and I just got heads. So I'm going to put that over here on the camera. There we go. Okay, next coin. You got a little line of them over here. That was a terrible, that didn't spin enough, I don't think. I'm trying to get it to really, really spin quickly to kind of get that randomizer going. Okay, I got heads again. All right, put that heads right next to that one. Grab this one. Oh, I had to dive for that one. Heads! All right, these are all coins, basically the same. Oh, God. That hit the roof. But it was spinning well. It hit the ground. I'm going to call it random. And it's heads. I was saying these are all similarly designed coins. This is before they made the big change back in the 90s. I think it was the 90s, maybe it was the 2000s. Heads! Let's grab another one. Heads! This is... all right, here we go. Heads! Heads! I love this. Tails! And tails! Random probability. Okay, so I just did an experiment where I flipped a penny 10 times and it came up heads 8 times. You could tell by my reaction, I was having a good time because it was what I would consider an unusual or outlier result. More on that next class. And I bet you all thought something might have been a little bit funny too. I mean, how likely is it that you flip a penny 10 times and get heads 8 times? We'll work on that in this class, I promise. But here's the deal. When scientists are trying to establish percentages, like the chance that a mask works, you can't just assign a probability of 50% or 50-50, as people often say. Just because something has two outcomes doesn't mean it's 50-50. I mean, if that were true, then every time I walk down the hallway, I'd fall down half the time. The other half the time I'd be fine. Which is ridiculous. I mean, you think about that. That doesn't make any sense. So, the only way to arrive at a percentage through experimentation is literally to do the experiment over and over again. So how do you feel about the experiment I just did? I flipped the coin 10 times and got heads 8 times. Would you feel statistically sound by saying the pennies that I have in this bin are 80-20 pennies. That means they're 4 times more likely to flip heads than tails? I bet you wouldn't. But if I asked you, well, you just watched me. I just flipped 10 pennies and 8 of them came up heads. So why not 80-20? At which point, you're probably going to go, Sean, you only flipped 10 pennies. Let's deal with that next.